responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brannon House.
Welcome, glad you're with us. Part 2, endeavor to open up the phone lines today as well. Part 2, a Jew and a Gentile. Look at Romans chapter 11. If you have a Bible, grab one. We've been going through it together here. We'll read it on the air and go through it. And joining me to do that is our reporter on the ground in Israel, but also our tour guide, because he is indeed a licensed tour guide there in Israel. And he's been making tours of the Holy Land for us. We've released a lot of videos. I think a couple more we're going to play tonight on Brannon House Live. And I think he has a couple more places he's going. And pretty soon we might have enough tours to put together a whole Israel channel. Wouldn't that be fun? I think we're going to be working on that. I think also at Worldview Tube we'll release this weekend, or probably today, tomorrow, for Thanksgiving, our concert from 2024, where I brought in my piano player, my grand piano, and did all traditional hymns that many of you will know and enjoy. We filmed that with multiple cameras, including a swinging boom. But we get so busy that we fall behind on post-editing stuff and putting it all together. So we're just about ready to release the concert from 2024. Then maybe we can get to the concert from 2025. Maybe we can get that one out here this week as well. So anyway, be watching for that as a great Thanksgiving TV special, classic hymns series that we're working on. Because we have a whole hymn channel, as you know. It'd be great to have a whole Israel channel with tours, because for those of us who have never been, probably will never go until the millennial kingdom. Maybe when the millennium happens, we'll get to tour Israel, listening audience, together. Wouldn't that be fun? Maybe Aaron can be our guide. But won't that be kind of fun to tour Jerusalem with some of the folks, some of the Bible characters themselves? I think you're going to have a chance to do that, folks, during that 1,000 years. Let's see, before we get to Romans 11, see what Aaron thinks of that. Aaron, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Brannon.
What do you think? You think we're going to be able to tour in the millennium Jerusalem with some of the Bible characters who were there?
I think so. But you know why I'm laughing, Brannon, is because over the 34 years that I've lived here in Israel, I've actually met some of those biblical characters. And I say that tongue-in-cheek because there is a phenomena here in Israel. It's called the Jerusalem syndrome. And about 100 people a year think that they're either King David or Elijah the prophet or one of the two witnesses. And I've met quite a few of them over the years. And actually, a lot of them, seriously, they end up in a mental institution in Jerusalem. So it's a real phenomena. And but seriously, I think we may listen. Moses and Elijah appeared on the Mount of Transfiguration with the Lord. They came to the land. Interestingly, God said to Moses, you can see the land, but you're not going to enter into it. And yet later on, he allowed Moses to enter in and be with the Lord on the Mount of Transfiguration. So I think so. I think we're going to see some of them.
That'd be great, won't it? Can't wait. We don't maybe talk about heaven quite enough. And that's why I loved when I got into Revelation chapter 21 and 22 to talk about that. And I think a lot of people don't realize we're going to be busy doing work. Work is not a curse. Work was going on before the fall. We're going to be busy working, exploring. We're going to explore the universe. We'll be able to move about very quickly. I just don't think people fully grasp what heaven is really all going to be about, and how it'll be about many things that are common to us today, but without the curse of sin. Would you agree?
I agree. My mind goes back to Genesis 3, where Genesis 2, the Lord said to Adam, tend the ground, tend the garden, and guard it. And thankfully, we're not going to have to guard it from anything in the future, because the devil is going to be sent away eternally to the abyss. But I think we're going to still have to tend the garden and make it even more beautiful. And our mansions, the Lord said, He's going to prepare a mansion for us.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that those are being built right now, that this This is going on right now. The building in the new Jerusalem is being built even now. If I go to prepare a place for you, right? That when I come again. So
Absolutely.
That's going on even now. That building, that planning, it's all going on now.
Yeah, with all the beautiful pearl and all the onyx and all the precious stones. But Brandon, seriously, I hope that's not a cop-out for you not wanting to come to this Jerusalem.
It is. It absolutely is. I'm not getting on any more planes. I did that for years. I'm done. Some relatives were just in town, and they were like, can we not get you convinced to get on a plane? I'm like, no, it's not happening. So I've been there, done that. Actually, I saw an article today, believe it or not. It was an article that came out today, and I think I put it over at worldviewreport.com, Aaron. Worldviewreport.com, our daily aggregated news site. Let's see if I have it up there. Worldviewreport.com. Yep, there it is. It is the Times. How Americans turn flying into a cesspool. The Transportation Secretary is begging us to behave ourselves on planes. Having flown to 6 continents as a travel editor, I say it's about time. Behave yourselves, Americans. Flying used to be something people got dressed up to do. They, it was like going to a nice restaurant. Who says stop? Who says do that? And Secretary Duffy has said stop wearing pajamas and slippers and put on your shoes. Yeah. Somebody was talking about how they shove their dirty feet right in your face between the seats and all this. And I'm telling you, I've seen it. I've seen it on some of the news stories, how people behave. So that among the fact I just got where I hated flying, absolutely hate it. No, I have no intentions of flying. So we're going to have to wait to the millennium for me to get to Jerusalem, Aaron. Just going to have to bide our time. Something tells me it's not too far off though, Aaron.
Oh, Brandon, the way things are going, incredible. Yeah, the signs, the clouds, the birth pangs, all the signs are heading that way.
Yep. All right, let's go to Romans chapter 11. Let's pick it up at verse 17. Romans chapter 11, verse 17. You will say then, branches were broken off that I might be, we'll bring it down the size a little bit so we can fit it in there. You will say then, branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Well said. Because of unbelief, they were broken off, and you stand by faith. Do not be haughty, but fear. For if God did not spare the natural branches, he may not spare you either. Therefore, consider the goodness of severity of God, of those who fell, severity, but toward you, goodness, if you continue in his goodness. Otherwise, you also will be cut off. And they also, if they do not continue in unbelief, will be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in together. Thomas Constable says, belief is what resulted in God grafting in believing Gentiles. And belief could result in him grafting in believing Jews in the future. And that's what's going to happen, isn't it, Aaron? There's going to be this revival, particularly during the tribulation period. And some passages use a hardening of the heart, a blinding. Well, I don't think that's a good reading of it because it's not a total hardening. It's a partial hardening. It's a partial blindness. Otherwise, you as a Jew wouldn't be a Messianic Jew, nor would Marty Goetz, nor would Olivia Melnick, nor would Arnold Fruchtenbaum. You would have no Jews that are believers. So it's obviously not a total hardening or a total blindness. It's a partial hardening, partial blindness that will be lifted during that tribulation period, correct?
Yeah, correct. And the other thing of how to read that verse as well, another way of reading it, is where Paul says Israel has been hardened in part. I think he's talking about the gospel. They've been hardened to the gospel. But in so many other ways, the Jewish mind and the ancient rabbis and the sages, if you read a lot of their commentaries, man, they have incredible insights. They know their God. They know the same God as we know, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But there's a part that they have been hardened to, and that's seeing who their Messiah is. Just like Joseph's brothers didn't see their own that they were speaking to their brother, but they didn't realize he was the savior of the day. He was the Messiah, the anointed one of the day, but they were blinded. So they have been hardened in part to the gospel. And the reason Paul says that is so that salvation can come to the Gentiles. So the Gentiles should be thankful that this is part of God's plan, but it doesn't stop there. It says that he's going to graft in even unbelieving Jews like myself and the others that you've mentioned, and many, many more around the world that are happening today. I mean, we have a number of people here, Brennan, that go out on the streets, evangelism. They have gospel tracts. They have Bibles translated. They have Bibles with commentaries. They have hotlines. Actually, some years ago, they had a conference, and at the conference, the leaders of the Messianic body came up with an idea to pay for inside of a newspaper. You know how you get the middle 2 pages with a staple in the middle?
Yeah.
So they wanted to pay for the prophecy of Daniel, where it says the Messiah will be cut off. And they wanted to get a 2-page advertisement right in the middle of the number 1 newspaper in Israel. So that we were praying about it at the conference. Someone went to the newspaper and asked them, and that person came back to us at the conference, stood up in front of everyone and said, I've just gone to the newspaper, and I gave them our idea. We wanted to print this. Who is Daniel speaking of? With phone numbers, a follow-up. And they told me how much money it will cost. And then he said in front of everyone, do you know how much money they said? 144,000 shekels.
Oh.
Everyone laughed because it was the number 144,000. So everyone said this must be tongue-in-cheek, but maybe it was a sign that this was the right thing to do. So they put it in the newspapers, and it got a lot of phoning up, asking, who is this? And the people on the lines were able to share that it talks about the Messiah.
And for those who are wondering what that's about, I think it's Revelation 7 off the top of my head, speaks of the 144,000 Jewish evangelists.
Yeah.
So that'd be the 144,000 reference he's making to the shekels. Isn't that interesting? Thomas Constable on this verse says, quote, the Gentile believer may feel superior to the unbelieving Jew, needs to remember something. The only reason he is where he is, partaking of blessing of the Abrahamic covenant, which of course gave us Messiah, the Bible, Constable writes, is because he has simply believed God. He is not there because he has done some meritorious work. It would be a ground for boasting. Paul's point was, if God set aside Jews temporarily because of their unbelief, he could do the same with the Gentiles because of their boasting. Interesting. I want to come back. I want to ask Aaron, in some ways, is God setting aside the Gentiles? Much of the influence of the Gentiles in the world has waxed. It's waning because of unbelief, because of boasting, because of anti-Semitism. We'll be right back.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
You're watching Worldview Tube, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
Welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com. Let's go to Romans 11, verse 24. Add this to our conversation. For if you were cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into a cultivated olive tree, how much more will these, who are natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? We're going to deal with that verse. But let me ask you this. The verse before, verse 23, is telling the Gentiles, be very careful about getting prideful, boastful, looking down on the Jew, because the Lord could set you aside from your place of privilege as well. The Bible says that the gates of hell is not going to prevail against the church. There is a church today on the earth. Those ecclesia, called out ones. I'm not talking about some 501c3 on a corner. We can have local New Testament fellowships, and people who are part of the church, the body of Christ, go there. But the church is called out ones, believers on a global scale. Of course they exist and still do. But narrows the way, few who find it. And the Bible tells us that in these last days, there'll be a great falling away, which leads me to believe that the numbers are not maybe as big as they once were for the confessing church on the earth today, maybe at a different time as they were during the church age. But one has to wonder if the Lord is indeed turning over many Gentile nations, and in that process, many so-called churches, they really aren't churches. They don't teach the word of God in context. They create and promote a false gospel. They teach a replacement theology, which distorts the character and nature of God. They won't teach certain books of the Bible anymore. They add to it. They take away. In some regard, is this actually happening? The influence of the Gentiles, while the church is still here, is there not an arrogance that has come upon the Gentiles, even self-described Gentile believers, that is causing them to lose the influence that maybe, of course, you and I as believers haven't lost our place of privilege or still being used by God's grace and mercy, but the Gentiles themselves, the church just doesn't have the influence it once had. Do you think that's partly because there has been a haughtiness and a rejection of really understanding and humility as described in this passage?
Wow. That's a tough question, Brennan. I don't want to point the finger, but Paul obviously was picking up on something by writing that. And remember, we talked about this last night, that originally the church at Rome was Jewish, but because of the Emperor Claudius, the Jews were expelled from Rome. So the church became a Gentile identity. Then the next Roman emperor allowed the Jews to come back for commerce and trade reasons because he knew that the Jews were very good. But when the Jewish believers came back to the Gentile church, the Jewish believers were wondering, well, where do we fit in? Because the Gentiles had taken over. And I think into that context, Paul was writing, and he had a concern that there was this sense of, you Jews, you had your chance, you missed it. We Gentiles are the new church, we're the new Israel. And this pride came in, absolutely. There's no need for pride here, Brandon, because if we all know who we are, if we all know our place, when I go to Tel Shiloh, where the red heifers, by the way, are, that's the place that Samuel delegated the 12 tribes their allotted land. And as I tell the story when I'm there, can you imagine the tribe of Simeon, who had the desert, looking at the tribe of Naphtali and Issachar, who had the Sea of Galilee? Maybe there was competition and jealousy and greed or envy, but we've got to learn to accept who we are, whether it's Jew or Gentile, male or female, slave or free, and somehow work out our salvation in that place. And so we're all one in the Messiah, Jew and Gentile. You and I, we may be different, but we're all accepted. We're on the same level in the Messiah. The other thing that comes to me, again, going back to the story of Joseph and his brothers, which is a prototype of Jesus and his Jewish brothers, just before Joseph revealed himself, it says he sent everyone out of the room, and there was no man there. And there's some rabbinical comment on that. Why does it say he sent them out and there was no one there? It's a double phrase. Why didn't it just say he sent them out? It adds, and there was no one there. And one of the rabbinical commentators was that the reason why it's mentioned double is because every man's ego had left that room.
Wow.
Joseph's brothers, by that stage, they realized the error of their way. They realized that they had done wrong. And Joseph, who had all that anger and hurt and pain, he could have been planning revenge and retribution, but his ego had gone to the side as well. And the other comment about him sending everyone out of the house is that now was the time for the Jewish Joseph, the Hebrew Joseph, to deal with his Hebrew brothers. He was going to do away with his Egyptian Gentile side that they thought he was. And now he's dealing with his Jewish brothers. And I think there's going to come a time. And this is why one of my passions is to restore to the Gentile church their Jewish roots. The Gentile church has to come to grips that their roots are in Judaism. Their Messiah is Jewish. And we need to take our Messiah, not as a Gentile Messiah, but as a Jewish Messiah. It's very important.
Well, I also have heard some well-known Bible teachers, I won't name, Arnold Fruchtenbaum takes on one or two of them by name, that have actually bemoaned the idea of messianic churches. And I'm like, first of all, you guys have no problem with your Calvinist churches. So why are you looking down and condemning messianic churches? You know, he's like, well, we're supposed to be one church. Well, just because you have a church that's a messianic church doesn't mean you're somehow making two churches. And Arnold Fruchtenbaum has taken this on. I won't name the well-known Bible teacher that's done this that he takes on. But I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you criticize messianic churches, Aaron? Why would any Bible teacher do that today?
Brandon, 1 Corinthians 9, I think it's 1 Corinthians 9. Paul said, to the Jew, I became a Jew. To the Gentile, to those under the law, I became as one under the law. Some of our Messianic congregations are very charismatic. It would be like going to just a Baptist church, but we speak in Hebrew. But other Messianic congregations are very religious. We have the Torah scrolls. And why? So that when Orthodox Jews who are curious or are invited to come in, they don't feel so strange and like it's a foreign Messiah that we're following. So I don't understand that criticism.
Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's arrogance. It's the very thing that Paul is condemning here in Romans 11. It's an arrogance. You need to come into our system and do it the way we say. You don't get to choose. We get to choose. No, it's arrogance, the very kind that I think Paul is condemning right here.
It makes sense. It makes total sense.
You know, you think about the history that the Jews who are not believers have to overcome. And I didn't understand this until I became close friends with people like Olivier Melnick. Arnold Fruchtenbaum helped me understand this too. Olivier Melnick the most. When you say you're a Christian to the average non-believing Jew, there's a reason a red flag goes up. They have been persecuted by a lot of people who claim to be Christian, right? You can say, obviously, I would say little c Christians. You know, there's some big C Christians who really are Christians who are not acting like they should. Yes, that happens. Because we're all sinners.
Mention that, Martin Luther.
Right. Martin Luther. Some would categorize the Catholic Church, and they would say, you know, Christians like the Catholic Church, and they would use a little c, right?
The Spanish Inquisitions, the Crusades.
Exactly. they see the cross and it makes them nervous. And we know that during the time of the Nazi Reich, they were mixing the cross with the swastika. You can go and look at black and white footage, black and white pictures, I have them, of some of the Reformed Calvinistic denominations at their national conferences with the cross, the flag, the cross and on the flag and the swastika. I've got the pictures. Well, there's a reason the Jews get nervous. They're not unaware of this history. And we bring a lot of baggage and we have to explain to them. And that's why when I talk to folks, we have a very large Jewish population here in the Mid-South. And when I talk to Jewish individuals that I meet and I find out they're Jewish, I'm very quick to explain to them, I'm a Christian Zionist. I'm a Christian Zionist. I believe in the historical and biblical right of the land for the people. We are big defenders of the Jews. And we fight anti-Semitism. And we understand it and its history, its origin. And when I explain that, you can actually see their body language start to relax. Because they know I'm using terms only a diehard would use that understands their position. And it's almost like their body language is relaxing and that they are picking up on the fact that I am trying to make a connection with them in a respectful way to tell them, you don't have to fear me because I'm a, quote, Christian. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, absolutely, Brandon, for sure. Instead of the classical approach by saying, like, let's say I'm a Gentile and I'm approaching you, a Jew, instead of saying, hey, you need to believe in my Messiah, you need to turn it around and say, I believe in your Messiah, Brandon. Mm-hmm. I believe in your Messiah. I've been to your holy land. And this is what Paul says that the Gentile should do, provoke the Jew to jealousy. And in fact, that's what happened when a Christian man started to reach me when I was 19. He had a love for God's word. He had a passion, and he loved the Jewish people. And I was like, why would you love the Jewish people? I didn't understand it. And it was like a magnet. It attracted me, the love that he had. So this is what Paul's talking about, provoke to jealousy.
Earlier this year, I think it was in the spring, I mentioned it to the audience, I was with 4 or 5 Jewish young guys on a job site and was talking to them at this job site. And they knew who I was because of another relative of theirs who's Jewish, who knew me really, really well. And so they knew a little bit about me. And the individual said, look, this guy's a Christian, but he's a big Christian Zionist. Well, when I met these guys, they were all from Israel, but they do business here in the Mid-South. And it was a business meeting we were having. And after we got kind of through our business meeting, or actually in the middle of it, we had to get back to business, they started shooting questions at me. And I was answering their questions about the rebuilding of the temple and the red heifers and how they got there and why, and Numbers chapter 19, I believe it is. And I was rattling all of this off. And one of them looked at my wife and said, he knows more about us and our history than we do. And my wife laughed and he said, no, I'm not kidding. I'll tell you more. Go away. Do you appreciate all the free programming we produce here at Worldview Tube? Well, if you do, we need your partnership now. If you're already supporting us, thank you. If you're not, would you please consider doing so? We have to have a big November and December end of the year giving. Please go here right now to this website, worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. You can give through credit card. You can give through PayPal. You'll find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. You'll also find our phone number. Simply use that phone number by leaving a voicemail for Melissa or texting her, and my wife will get back with you and help you make your contribution over the phone. We send out tax receipts with our EIN number, well, the first week of February of each year. We, again, have to have a very big November and December as we get ready for pushing out more Christian Worldview programming for 2026. So thank you for going now to worldviewfoundation.com. That's worldviewfoundation.com. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldviewradio.com. So I was just standing there answering their questions of these Jewish guys who are from Israel, who do some business here in the States, and particularly here in the Mid-South, young guys in their 20s, mid-20s, late 20s. And they're shooting me questions about the rebuilding of the temple, the red heifers. Why are you interested in this? As a Christian Gentile, why are you so interested in all these topics? Why do you have a reporter on the ground in Israel? And they were thankful about my support of the nation. They just wanted to understand, why is it you're so supportive as a Gentile? How does this fit into your end time belief and Christian beliefs? And I began to explain it. And as I said before the break, one of them looked at my wife and said, he knows more about us and our country in some aspects than we do. They were asking, well, tell me more about these red heifers. When did they get there? Why are they there? And it was other questions being asked. And they were even asking me questions about Iran, about October 7th, and just different. They were asking me quite a few questions about Gog Magog, Ezekiel 38 and 39. I mean, we were running the gamut, all off the cuff. And when he looked at my wife and said, he knows more about us and our country than we do, and laughed, my wife thought he was being sarcastic, like, we know all this. He's not telling us anything we don't know. I think he thought my wife thought that. And because he laughed when he said it, and she laughed, and he said, but no, I'm not joking with you, though. It's just funny, but I'm not joking. He does. And I think about that because I think I was making them jealous as a Christian Gentile Zionist who was so excited and fired up about what God was doing and going to do and the protection he was going to bring during Gog Magog. And they went into great detail with me on Gog Magog. They started speaking Hebrew to each other on it. One of them looked up on one of his iPhones something about it and was confirming, yeah, that's right. Do you think this is in part what Paul's talking about for us to make them jealous? Aaron?
I do, Brent. And not only to make them jealous, but again, with the warning, don't be haughty. Because here's the thing. A lot of Jewish people, they're ignorant. They don't know their Bible. They don't know their scriptures. They don't know their history. I was one. I grew up a very secular, traditional Jew. I went to the synagogue. I went on the high holy days. I had a bar mitzvah, but I didn't have any personal relationship with God, and I didn't really know my history. So when Gentiles come along and they know a lot and they've been enlightened, so on one hand, yeah, make them jealous, but don't be proud and say, well, we know the truth and you don't. That is arrogant.
Yeah, it is. And I think because we were, in a setting where we were just sharing back and forth, there was no defensiveness by any of them. They were not in any way threatened by my being a Christian Gentile, right? Because they knew I was a Christian Zionist, but they wanted to know, why are you such a Zionist? And I kept pointing back because my Messiah is Jewish. You don't understand, my Messiah is Jewish, and your country, your nation is going to play a huge role in the last days. And I was saying, right now I'm teaching through the book of Revelation, verse by verse. And I said, you're going to have some evangelists show up in Jerusalem preaching. And I think they're going to be of Hebrew descent. And you're going to see many things happening with the 144,000 Jewish evangelists. And I was explaining some of this to them. They'd never heard this because obviously they're not studying the book of Revelation, but they were intrigued by it. I think they were shocked, to be honest with you, that a Gentile was so excited about what was going to be coming with the activity of specific Jews and Jewish individuals that I was describing. I think they were shocked, to be honest with you. I don't know, maybe someone else had discussions with them about the book of Revelation, but I don't think so. Now, they did have a little bit more working knowledge of Ezekiel, but they didn't have a whole lot. They didn't have a whole, it was very, very, very shallow. And because the questions they were shooting at me told me they don't know a lot about this. So what about in the culture there, in the news there? Is Ezekiel 38, Gog Magog, is this talked about much?
Well, it depends what channels you're listening to, Brandon, because we have about 3 very secular channels, and then we have a couple that are religious. And you will definitely get this kind of these passages talked about by rabbinical sages, by teachers, definitely. But you won't. In fact, on the secular programs, if anyone brings up this kind of talk, it's very much disrespected. The secular Jewish people, they do not like this talk. They call it messianic. They call it a threat to the security of Israel, believe it or not.
Wow.
They say this is the kind of talk that's going to start a third world war. And you know what? They may be right.
Huh. Let's go to Romans 11:24. We've already made reference to it. For if you were cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into a cultivated olive tree, how much more will these, who are natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? Andy Woods writes, this illustration to warn the Gentiles against pride is what's going on here. Just because Gentile believers, as represented by the wild branches, have been grafted into the olive tree does not mean that the Gentiles should become arrogant. They should not suffer from the misconception that Israel has been permanently set aside. If God can remove Israel from the place of blessing, he can do the same to the Gentiles. Paul also uses the illustration of the olive tree to hint at Israel's restoration, verses 23 and 24. If Israel does not continue in unbelief, God will bring her back to the place of blessing. Thomas Constable writes, obviously the branches formerly broken off do not represent the same individuals as those grafted in the future. They are Jews who in the former case did not believe, and in the latter case will. That's so important. This is not a breaking off of all Jews. It's a breaking off of those Jews at the time that did not believe. And the grafting in the future of the natural branches are those Jews who will believe. But some people use this to say, see, they're broken off. God's done with them. Right. Well, again, why don't you keep reading the passage? Because the passage says they're going to be, the natural branches will be grafted back in.
Brandon, why don't they continue reading the passage? Why do they stop?
Presupposition, the pride, the very pride the chapter is warning against.
Yeah. Yeah. And, but knowing what we know, knowing that God is going to graft in the natural olive branches, it's almost like the Gentiles' approach to evangelism should almost be like, you know, I've got something up my sleeve for you, sir, you Jewish man, you Jewish woman. I know a mystery. I so much want you to know it. You know, one day your people as a nation, they're going to know it. Mm-hmm. But what about you? What about you today? It's almost like there's a mystery that we've been blessed and we so want to pass it on.
Revelation 11:25-27, for I do not desire, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own opinion. So what was a mystery is now going to no longer be a mystery. Thomas Constable says the revelation of the mystery in this case was that Israel, ethnic Jews, would experience a partial hardening from God until the full number of the elect Gentiles would be saved. God's plan to put the nation of Israel aside temporarily should not make Gentile believers think too highly of themselves. God designed this plan to display his glory. And again, this is why Brandon, it's so, yeah, Aaron?
On that passage that you just read where it says Israel has experienced hardening apart until the fullness of the Gentiles. Now that translation that you showed says until the full number of the Gentiles, but in most translations it's the fullness of the Gentiles. And I've read some pretty scholarly comments on that verse. What does the fullness of the Gentiles mean? And I used to think, and maybe it still means the full number of the Gentiles, but some scholarly that goes right into the Greek, what it taught was the fullness of the Gentiles means the full revelation that the revelation that the Gentile church will receive about what Paul is talking about. When the Gentile church gets this full revelation, then all Israel will be saved. Now, you may need to check that out, what I've just shared. But if it's correct, it makes a lot of sense, because the Gentile church does not have this full revelation, and quite the opposite, which is what we've been talking about, replacement theology.
Wow.
And so that's what I was saying. That's what I was saying before. One of my passions and your passions is to teach the Gentile church about this, to bring the Gentile church more into her Hebraic Jewish roots and background, context, understanding what Paul's writing about, who he's writing to, and this concept of the fullness of the Gentiles. They need this revelation.
Let me go to this part of the passage of Romans 11. And so all Israel will be saved. So that the blindness in part has happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles has come in. And so all Israel will be saved, as it is written. The deliverer will come out of Zion, and he will turn away ungodliness from Jacob. For this, my covenant with them, when I take away their sins. Olivia Melnick writes, this reference to all Israel does not include all Jews of all times, but only the Jews who survived the time of Jacob's trouble, also known as the Great Tribulation. Unfortunately, according to Zechariah 13, 8 through 9, 2/3 of the Jewish people living during the Great Tribulation will perish. So it's those who physically make it through, but also those who died as martyrs. They will understand this when Christ returns, and they're given this millennial kingdom, and they're invited into this millennial kingdom. All will be saved. Not every Jew. It's not. In other words, what I'm trying to say is it's not promoting universalism. It's that all those who are alive and have physically made it through the tribulation have been spiritually and physically preserved. And then I also believe those who have died as martyrs, when they're resurrected, then you have this nation that has been fully redeemed, this all of Israel. That's what's being referred to. Would you agree, Aaron?
I would, Brandon. And I think one has to differentiate between salvation on an individual basis and salvation on a national basis. Because we all know that on an individual basis, there's only one name under heaven whereby we must be saved, and that's through Yeshua. And that has been happening throughout centuries. Jewish people have been saved. And in fact, Romans 9, Paul says there is a remnant saved by grace. So there are individuals that have been and still are being saved on an individual basis. But what Paul is talking about, the all Israel, I agree. I think that that's talking about during the future tribulation period, when that fullness, that full number of that remnant will all be saved.
Phone lines open. Phone lines open. 1-800-347-9829. 1-800-347-9829.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed. All right, be sure to stay tuned for Crosstalk with your host, Jim Schneider, America's original Christian talk program since the 1970s at vcy.org, vcy.org. Let's see here. Let's go to, is today the 21st? No, today is the 25th. So that would be last Friday. So today is Tuesday, isn't it? All right, 11:25. Thank you. That helped. Let's go to Brian, line 1 from North Dakota. Hi, Brian.
Hi. Hey, happy Thanksgiving, guys.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you. Say, you stoked my thinking there when you were talking about fullness, and I'm not saying this is gospel or anything, but I've always read it to mean like full circle, and I'm using 451 AD as an example where the Arabs really kind of erred on the dual nature of Christ being fully God and fully man, and it caused a hardening of hearts, and they were clearly wrong, and the gospel went up into Europe instead. And now it's like you see the exact reverse happening where the gospel's making its way back towards the Arabs. Full circle.
Aaron, you want to comment on that?
I'm not sure if I understood when he said it's coming back to the Arabs. Did he mean the Jews?
Well, yes, Israel is going to be an amazing Christian country one day, for sure. But it's like Paul, well, it wasn't Paul, but the other apostles did get the gospel to the surrounding nations right there in that part of the world, and I see it coming back. And then I see those people getting the gospel back to the Jewish people, and that's full circle.
Amen, brother. Yes.
Thank you,
Good
Brian.
point.
Let's go to, 1-800-347-9829. I got a line open. Let's go to Jim, line 2. Hi, Jim.
Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for this program. I was going to call yesterday because you were talking about the same topic, but I wanted to give a quick testimony about 1985 when I rededicated my life to the Lord out in Colorado, Fort Collins. And I remember a college and career pastor, a black pastor named Johnny Square. He was warning us about the Christian church not boasting about where we were at because of the vines and how we were grafted in, and we could certainly be taken away as well. So I just wanted to share that. There's not too many messages I can remember that far ago, but that one stuck with me.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it, Jim. Dave in Arizona, line 3. Hi, David.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call. I just wanted to add to what Aaron had said. And, in Matthew 5:17, it says, "Think not that I am come to destroy the law or the prophets. I'm not come to destroy, but to fulfill." So Yeshua HaMashiach is keeping all of the 10 commandments. And I think we should keep the Sabbath. And that should be restored in Christian doctrine.
Thank you, Dave. And see, I'm not going to criticize Dave for believing that, because the Bible says that we should not be compelled for one holiday or another. If you want to go to church on Saturday, if he wants to do that, I'm not going to criticize Dave for that. But I also understand why people, particularly right after the resurrection, started going to church on Sunday. But I don't think we should be critical if someone wants to go on Saturday. Would you agree with that?
No, I agree totally that we shouldn't be critical. I think for me personally, I think it's important to differentiate. Going back to the book of Acts, the Sabbath was the Sabbath. The first day of the week was not the Sabbath.
That's right.
The first day was the Lord's Day or Resurrection Day.
That's right.
And it wasn't even Sunday until the 4th century. It was called the first day of the week, but it didn't replace the Sabbath. It was to celebrate the resurrection of the Lord. So the early apostles actually celebrated both days, the Sabbath and the Lord's Day, Resurrection Day.
So how about you?
I celebrate the Sabbath. And again, when our brother just said we should keep the Sabbath, what does that mean? Keep the Sabbath. That's a huge topic. But I respect and honor and recognize the Sabbath was, and will always be the Sabbath. But people that want to celebrate and meet together on the first day of the week, they want to call it Sunday, fine. I don't have a problem with that. Like you said, Colossians 2:16, let's not get into arguments about Sabbath, new moons, and festivals. These are all a shadow The reality is the Messiah, Yeshua.
And we have another Dave, but this was calling in from Florida, line 4. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Brandon. How are you?
Great. Thank you, Dave.
I just wanted to, first of all, God bless Aaron there. He is such an amazing witness for the Lord. He's just an amazing guy. It's so nice to listen to him. I just wanted to reiterate a lot of things that Pastor Woods has said that has really taught me and spoken to my heart. And that is, Genesis 12, verse 3, whoever blesses you, I will bless. Whoever curses you, I will curse. There's no statute of limitations when it comes to that. And Israel does not need the United States. The United States needs Israel. Because remember, God will judge in kind, just like when the Egyptians drowned, God's people. He says, "Okay, you're going to drown my people. I'll drown your people." And being that with this present administration, separating and seeking to divide up the land of Israel, and put a pagan people even closer access to them. Well, guess what's happening to us in the United States?
Wow.
We're being divided, and we're being infiltrated by pagan peoples, and that's how God works.
Yeah, it's very,
Israel is going to be just fine because they have an unconditional covenant with the Creator of the universe. It's
Excellent.
the United States that I'm worried about because
Absolutely.
we're not doing what we're supposed to do.
100% agree. I got to cut you off only because I want to get to
Anyway.
Janet real quick. But that's excellent. I love that, Dave. Janet, line 2 from Kentucky. You go quick. I hear you have a very interesting testimony, Janet.
Yes, our pastor was sharing with me his daughter married a Hebrew man, and
he married a Jewish man.
Father is a rabbi, and they were talking, and I can't remember how the subject of the return of Christ came up, but the rabbi said, "Well, we're preparing for the return of Christ," and Andy said, "Well, that we believe that's Jesus," and he said, "I don't know much about this Jesus." And he asked, is your Jesus from the line of David? He said, yes, he is. Was he born of a virgin? Yes, he was. And they're having Thanksgiving together this weekend, and I've just been praying. I am so excited. I just see it being fulfilled right before me,
Wow. Great testimony. Excellent. Thank you, Janet. Great program, A Jew and a Gentile. Look at Romans 11. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Brandon.
Brought to you by our foundation, our reporter on the ground, worldviewfoundation.com. And stay tuned for Crosstalk at vcy.org. Happy Thanksgiving. Take care. And we're back with WROS out of Jacksonville, Florida, and you here on Worldview Tube. Aaron, what's the latest going on in Israel? Anything new going on the ground there from a war standpoint? I agree with the caller, by the way. America needs to we need to butt out. Trying to tell you guys what to do, setting up this Gaza Council, Trump being the chairman of it, bringing in all these different Gaza forces. I learned this idea of, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, equal punishment, equal to the offense. It should be equal weights and measures. And you see that, as the caller said, and Arnold Fruchtenbaum, I think, is the one that taught most of us this. You drown my children, the Jewish children, right? You drown the firstborn. I'm going to drown your people. And we see this again and again. You did this to my people, I'm going to do this to your people. You did this to my people, I'm going to do this to your people. And Arnold Fruchtenbaum lays all that out. It's like, whoa, that's something I never really considered. And now he makes the caller did, saying, David did, that you're going to divide my land, and now I'm dividing America. You're going to bring in foreigners into my land and have them terrorist in our land. I'm going to bring terrorists into your land. And that's what we have. We're being divided. Our country's divided. We have terrorists flooding all over our country. It looks as though God's doing the very things to us that we're trying to force onto Israel. Aaron?
Yeah, I thought that analogy was superb. Well done, David. But again, and I talked about this last night, to me, it's the birthright. When we talk about Genesis 12:3 and following that, bless Abraham, I will bless those who bless you. It's recognizing that Abraham was given a birthright right, seed and land. And it's recognizing that and honoring that. And this, thereby doing so, you're affirming Abraham and his seed, and there's a blessing that comes back to you for acknowledging and recognizing that.
Yeah, indeed it does. All right. Well, we hope you don't do Thanksgiving over there. I know that's an American.
There are, I think there's about 700, 800,000 American Jews that live here now.
Mm-hmm.
And so they celebrate Thanksgiving. Yeah, it's a big thing.
You're telling me the American Jews have brought Thanksgiving to Israel?
Of course. Hey, we have a baseball league here, Brandon. We have a little American football league here as well.
So you guys, some of the Jews get together, they have turkey and stuffing and all of that, and they're thankful for America, the founding of America.
Pumpkin pie, you name it. July the 4th, they celebrate. But
they do fireworks on the 4th of July in Israel to celebrate America.
They do. There are English groups. Yeah, absolutely.
That is funny. Wow. All right. Well, let me go over to the Jerusalem Post real quick, see if I'm missing anything over there. Not seeing too much today. The big talk over here in America right now, Aaron, is this executive order by President Trump, the Genesis mission. He signed a big executive order last night for AI. I mean, he's going full bore on AI in America. And it's got a lot of people very concerned that Donald Trump is being used to set up basically the World Economic Forum, 15-minute cities, a beast system, social credit scores, and he's just going full tilt on this. So that's one of the big stories floating around here in America today. A lot of people concerned about this. And of course, America going to war with Venezuela. That's another big concern today, is going to war with Venezuela.
Yeah, I followed both of those, Brandon. The big news here is actually Donald Trump has given us green light to fly over all of Lebanon's airspace. And it's all go, Brandon. I've been listening to generals talking about a new massive front breaking out from Lebanon, from Hezbollah, 200,000 rockets that are loaded and ready and aimed at us. So we're getting reservists called up and other reservists are ready. So yeah, this is quite disturbing. And I'm hearing reports as well. We've talked about this for a long time. The whole issue of Judea and Samaria must be dealt with, and the generals are planning ahead. Once Hezbollah are dealt with, and once Hamas are dealt with, which is happening as we're talking, our soldiers, our Air Force are fighting. Judea and Samaria will be next. It's already on the table.
Wow. All right, we're going to stay posted on that. Now we're going to go away for Thanksgiving, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But if there's breaking news, we'll get right back on and get our reporter on the ground in Israel, Aaron Lavarco. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Brandon. Bless you.
And we sent him a love offering yesterday, folks. So please support our foundation so we can keep our reporter supported on the ground over there. WorldviewFoundation.com. Thank you so much. May God save America. Take care.